you know not to go up to your chest in certain swamps. Forget the giant snakes. When you fall into that nightmare soup at 2 in the morning and you get that black water on you and there's things going up your pants, it's like you are in a festival of sex and death.
This year, I went into Songdung, which is the world's largest cave. It's this massive opening, 6 miles of underground cave.
Hello?
Someone from the team discovered a doorway that leads to one of these caves. The more they dug, the more they found.
Ancient underground cities are full of mystery, legends, and dark secrets. From hidden lairs where dark rituals took place to criminal underworlds full of human corpses. These are ancient underground cities that were sealed to keep the evil inside. The Hellfire Caves are a series of man-made tunnels and caverns in Buckinghamshire, England, stretching about 260 meters underground. The caves were created in the 18th century and were used by a secretive club founded by Sir Francis Dashwood, which included influential figures like William Hogarth and John Wilkes. Though Benjamin Franklin wasn't a member, he was also a close friend of Dashwood and visited the caves several times. Apparently. The club operated under various names, such as the Brotherhood of St. Francis Wycombe and the Order of the Friars of St. Francis of West Wycombe. Their motto, "Do what thou wilt," kinda hints at their hedonistic lifestyle. Members were rumored to engage in these wild, pagan-like rituals. They were said to hold feasts that included excessive drinking and debauchery. Locals would gossip about the devil worshipping supposedly going on down there. Some even whispered about them practicing human sacrifices. By the early 1760s, the club had faded away, but urban legends about the caves continued. One of the most popular stories involves the ghost of Suki, a young maid who was accidentally killed during a prank. People also claim to have seen her ghost wandering the caves. Another legend mentions the spirit of Paul Whitehead, a former steward of the Hellfire Club, who's also said to haunt the tunnels. The Edinburgh Vaults, also known as the South Bridge Vaults, are a series of chambers beneath the South Bridge in Edinburgh, Scotland. This bridge was built in the late 18th century, completed in 1788, and originally served as a way to connect different parts of the city. For about 30 years, the vaults were used for different businesses. There were taverns and workshops for cobblers, but the vaults were never properly sealed against water, which meant they began to flood soon after opening. By 1795, businesses started abandoning the space, and the vaults quickly became a hangout for homeless and criminals. Illegal gambling dens started cropping up, and there were even rumors that body snatchers started stashing corpses down there. As the Industrial Revolution changed the landscape of Edinburgh, the area nearby turned into a slum, and the vaults then became cramped living quarters for many poor families. The conditions were horrible, as you can imagine. I mean, living in a tiny room with 10 other people, no sunlight, and a stench that combined stale waste with fish oil lamps. It's no wonder robberies and killings became so common. The vaults were eventually closed down as early as 1835 or as late as 1875. And they were mostly forgotten until the 1980s, when a former Scottish rugby player, Norrie Rowan, stumbled on a tunnel leading to them. Norrie helped a Romanian rugby player escape from the secret police through this very tunnel during the Romanian Revolution. I want to know more about that, but that's probably another video. The Paris catacombs are, of course, one of the most famous underground sites in the world, and they definitely have a reputation for being a little creepy. Beneath the city of Paris lies a vast network of tunnels and chambers filled with the bones of over 6 million people. It's one of the most macabre tourist destinations in the world, but most of the tunnels are off limits, with many believing they were sealed off to keep something sinister contained. The catacombs started out as limestone quarries in the late 18th century, but when Paris's cemeteries started getting overcrowded and then started causing health issues, city officials decided to move some of the bones underground. They transferred remains from several different graveyards into these tunnels, stacking them up, kind of creating these artistic displays of skulls and femurs. Urban legends say that the catacombs are haunted, that lost spirits roam the tunnels. And not just the spirits of people who were interred here, but people who have wandered too far into the catacombs and never found their way out again. Nushabad underground city, located near the town of Nushabad in Iran, is a site that dates back to the Sasanian area, around 5th century CE. It's a massive underground complex that stretches over 3 kilometers and is made of a series of tunnels, chambers, and passageways that were used for different purposes. There were living quarters, storage, and places of worship. The city was carved out of the soft volcanic rock, making it easier to create intricate designs and rooms. What's really intriguing is that Nushabad was built not just for shelter, but as a refuge from invaders. When threats loomed above ground, residents could escape into the subterranean labyrinth, which was cool and dark, perfect for hiding out. But here's where it gets a little creepy. Some say that the tunnels were also used to house prisoners, and that eerie happenings have been reported by those who've ventured down there. As the story goes, some believe that the spirits of those who were imprisoned still linger in the shadows. The Terracotta Army, discovered in 1974 by a group of farmers digging a well in China, is an incredible archaeological find and a source of some pretty spooky legends. The massive pit is filled with thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, horses, and chariots, all made over 2,000 years ago to protect the tomb of King Shi Huang, China's first emperor. The idea was that these clay warriors would accompany him into the afterlife and fend off any threats. And many scholars believe that the Terracotta Army was never meant to be seen by the living. For centuries, it was just a myth, hidden away beneath the earth. The emperor's followers worked for more than 36 years to create this elaborate tomb, and the fact that it was disturbed has led to tales about the massive underground tomb being haunted. After the discovery, things turned dark for the farmers. Apparently, their village was relocated due to the increased attention from archaeologists and tourists, and many of them faced hardships like illnesses and financial trouble. In the pits surrounding the warriors, skeletal remains were also found, including those of women who were thought to be the emperor's concubines for the afterlife. This has led to even more rumors about the site being cursed. Toiming Cave, also called the Cave of the Twins, is located in a nature reserve in Israel, right on the edge of the Jerusalem mountains. The cave is pretty interesting because it's packed with archaeological finds from different times in history. Researchers have found human bones, old weapons, and coin hoards in there. There's also evidence that the cave had an alabaster quarry dating back to the Middle Bronze Age, but what's really cool is that it might have been used for necromancy rituals during the late Roman period. Between 2010 and 2016, archaeologists found over 120 intact oil lamps inside this cave. Most of these lamps are from the 2nd to 4th centuries CE, and they were purposely placed in narrow crevices along the walls or under debris. Some spots had clusters of these oil lamps mixed in with weapons, pottery from earlier times, and even human skulls. This all hints that the cave could have been used for rituals related to communicating with the dead. The idea is that people were lighting these lamps to connect with spirits of the underworld, trying to talk to the deceased or predict the future. It turns out using caves for rituals was a common practice back in the Roman and Byzantine days. Historical texts even mention cases of witch trials happening in caves like this. Beneath the streets of Columbia, South Carolina, there's a mysterious network of catacombs, and no one really knows for sure what they were built for. These eerie tunnels are completely off limits to the public. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Columbia was booming and extra space was needed, so a series of passages and rooms were constructed under the city. Now, initially intended for practical uses like storage, as time went on, the stories about these catacombs started to shift. They started being used during Prohibition for bootlegging operations or to stash away stolen goods, but the legends didn't even stop there. There are even darker tales that the catacombs may have been used for more sinister things like secret rituals or hideouts for some of the worst criminals in the city. And then you have the fact that nowadays these tunnels are sealed off. A lot of it's off limits, and a lot of them remain unexplored. So, what could be lurking down there? Beneath the streets of Rome lies a vast labyrinth of tunnels and chambers known as the catacombs. These ancient burial sites date back to the 2nd century and served as the final resting place for early Christians, Jews, and various minority groups during the Roman Empire. While they may not be your typical underground city, the sheer scale and history make them really cool. The catacombs are divided into several key areas, including the catacombs of San Callisto, the catacombs of San Sebastiano, and the catacombs of Priscilla. Each of these locations has intricate tombs adorned with all these beautiful frescoes and sculptures, giving you a bit of a glimpse into the beliefs and lives of those who are buried there. Some of the artworks depict biblical scenes. Others have symbols of faith reflecting the hope of resurrection in a time of persecution. As you wander through these narrow passageways, the atmosphere can feel eerie, no doubt. And there are miles of tunnels filled with remains of over 1 million people, so that definitely adds to the creep factor. Some legends say that the catacombs are haunted, with whispers of the past echoing through the dark corridors. The Bach casemates in Luxembourg are the remnants of this massive fortress built in 693. Over the centuries, this place changed hands multiple times, and with each new ruler, there was some new flair. But it was the Spanish who really got the ball rolling in 1644 by transforming medieval cellars into fortified firearm emplacements. Then in the 1680s, a French engineer stepped in and supercharged the defenses. The Bach casemates became a labyrinth of tunnels over 131 feet deep, or 40 meters. The underground had stables, workshops, kitchens, bakeries. The place was impenetrable too. In 1794, it held off against a 7-month siege. By the late 1800s, though, peace needed to be made, so the Treaty of London led to the fortress's demolition. It took 16 years, but in the process they realized that they couldn't tear down the casemates without affecting the city above, so a section of these tunnels are still standing today. Kuldhara village in India may not be an underground city, but it is very old, abandoned, and supposedly cursed. So what happened to this place? Well, legend has it that a tyrannical prime minister named Salim Singh set his sights on the daughter of the village head. She wasn't into him, but he wasn't the kind of guy to take no for an answer, and he threatened the entire village with dire consequences if they didn't give in to his demands, to, I guess, force this woman to marry him. Now, instead of bowing down to this cruel ruler, the people of Kuldhara packed up and they left. And not just a handful of people, 85 villagers worth of people vanished into the desert, never to be seen again. But they did leave something behind. Before they vanished, they placed a curse on the village, declaring that no one would ever be able to settle there again. And today, Kuldhara still stands, but locals warn that anyone who tries to spend the night there may not make it out alive. One of the most mind-blowing lost cities is Dwarka, an ancient city said to be submerged beneath the waters of the Arabian Sea. The legend goes that Dwarka was the home of Lord Krishna, and it was a grand city with incredible architecture. The belief is that Dwarka sank around 5,000 years ago, but recently scientists discovered underwater ruins that may place the city further back in history than they thought before. Archaeologists found what looks like streets, walls, massive stone structures, all under the sea. And what's interesting is that these ruins line up with descriptions from ancient texts. Some believe that the city was a center for trade and culture, possibly one of the most advanced civilizations of its time. These ruins could potentially be evidence of a civilization far ahead of its time. Some even think that Dwarka was a city with advanced technology, and that, kind of like Atlantis, it was all lost in a cataclysmic event like an earthquake or a flood. The lost city of Ubar, also known as the Atlantis of the Sands, described in ancient texts as a city of incredible wealth and power, Ubar was said to be located somewhere in the Arabian desert. According to the stories, the city was a trading hub known for its luxurious palaces and riches, but then one day it vanished, and supposedly it was swallowed up by the desert itself. For centuries, no one could find any concrete evidence that it ever existed. But in the 1990s, something amazing happened. Using satellite imagery and modern technology, scientists and archaeologists discovered what looked like the remains of a large city buried deep in the desert. The ruins seemed to match the descriptions of Ubar, massive structures, intricate roadways, but is it the actual city or something else altogether? There's still a lot of debate. Yonaguni, this sunken city off the coast of Japan. At least some say it's a sunken city. This place is wild though. It's an underwater site that was discovered in 1986 by a diver named Kihachiro Aritake, and what he found were all these massive stone formations that look like they could have been part of an ancient city. Steps, walls, and terraces all sitting deep underwater. But the thing is, no one can agree on whether it was constructed by humans or just natural rocks shaped by the ocean. Some people think it's the remains of a city that sank thousands of years ago, and saying that the stone formations look way too precise to be a coincidence, like there's no way nature could have made all these flat surfaces and stair-like steps on its own. On the flip side though, others say it is just natural erosion, nothing more than weird rocks shaped by water over a long period of time. And whether it's the remains of an ancient city or not though, Yonaguni still attracts divers and scientists from all over the world. At the end of the day, the place just looks cool. The lost city of Kalahari is one of the most interesting mysteries in African exploration. The story begins in 1885 when a Canadian adventurer and showman named William Leonard Hunt, going by Guillermo Farini as his stage name, ventured deep into the Kalahari Desert. On his return to the west, he published a book describing these strange rock formations he believed were ruins of a long-lost city. He even presented evidence to the Royal Geographical Society, including photos of what he thought were ancient structures hidden in the desert. Farini described the site as a desolate place with half-buried ruins, massive stones, and what appeared to be tombs or temples. Over the years, there were expeditions, with over 25 in 1932 alone, but none found any definitive proof of the city. In the 60s, a researcher named A.J. Clement proposed a new theory that Farini never actually reached the heart of the Kalahari. Instead, Clement believed the so-called ruins that he talked about were just natural rock formations that, due to erosion, looked like straight-edge stones and walls. But that's just his theory. Could there really have been a long-lost city somewhere in the Kalahari Desert? Akrotiri was found on the Greek island of Santorini. The city was completely wiped out by one of the largest volcanic eruptions in history. The eruption buried it under volcanic ash, which was horrific, but it also ended up preserving it like a time capsule. The city was incredibly advanced for its time. Archaeologists have uncovered well-preserved buildings with multi-story structures, advanced plumbing systems. The eruption, which scientists believe happened around 1600 BCE, left the city completely buried and its people vanished without a trace. And some believe that the eruption was the inspiration behind the legend of Atlantis, with its advanced civilization being swallowed up by the sea in an instant. Agartha is said to be a hidden advanced city deep beneath the surface of the earth. The idea comes from ancient legends, but it really became more popular in the 20th century, especially with people who are into esoteric beliefs and conspiracy theories. It ties into the hollow earth theory quite a bit. Some people think Agartha is an underground utopia where highly advanced civilizations have lived for thousands of years. The story goes that Agartha is connected by a network of tunnels that stretches all around the planet. Some say it's home to ancient beings with knowledge and technologies far beyond what we have. Stories about Agartha usually involved lost civilizations, UFOs, and secret government cover-ups are also said to be involved. Some believe that famous explorers like Admiral Byrd might have even visited, and that the knowledge of its existence has been suppressed for one reason or another. Troy, made famous by Homer's Iliad, is one of the most legendary cities in ancient history. The stories are packed with gods meddling in human affairs, heroes like Achilles, and of course, that famous wooden horse. But aside from all the fantastical elements, archaeologists believe that there's some truth behind the myths. Rustem Aslan, the director of excavations at the site, says, "I believe the Trojan War was a historical event, just not the kind that Homer described." Over the last 150 years of digging at the site, researchers have uncovered that Troy was occupied for over 4,000 years. During the Late Bronze Age, which lines up with the time Homer's Trojan War, the city's inhabitants were clearly preparing for something big, most likely a war. Now, while we still haven't found definitive proof of the epic battle described in the Iliad, Aslan is confident that it's out there, buried deep under 65 feet of dirt. So even though the gods might not have played a part in it, the city itself was a real and powerful place. Alright, so not really a city, but a mythological castle and court. Camelot, a legendary castle at the heart of the King Arthur tales, is a name that most of us recognize from Hollywood films and stories that have been retold countless times. King Arthur, the noble king, and his band of knights are the stuff of legend. But the question is, was Camelot real? Well, over the centuries, historians have dug into this. In 1542, poet John Leland suggested that Cadbury Castle in Somerset might be the real Camelot. Why? Well, it's close to the River Cam and villages named Queen Cam and West Camel, which seems like a pretty close link to Camelot. And during the 20th century, archaeologists dug into that area. Their findings were pretty interesting. They found evidence of a settlement going back to the 4th millennium BCE, and a major fortification built around 470 CE. It was massive, the largest of its time. It seemed to fit the story of a powerful ruler, possibly Arthur, fortifying his kingdom, but not everyone buys into the Cadbury Castle theory. Some historians think that the site was built too late to match the Camelot of Arthurian legend, and other places like Cornwall and Huddersfield have also been theorized as possible locations for Camelot. El Dorado is one of the most famous legends of all time, and it all started with a story about a tribal chief. So back in the 16th century, the Spanish explorers heard about a leader who would cover himself in gold and jewels and then dive into Lake Guatavita as part of a ritual. He was believed to be the key to untold wealth, and the story quickly grew in the minds of the Spanish, and what started as a tale about one man became a search for an entire city and then a whole empire said to be filled with gold. The Spanish couldn't get enough, and they scoured the lands of modern-day Colombia, Venezuela, and Brazil, convinced that they'd one day find this golden city. But they never found a trace of El Dorado. That doesn't mean the legend was completely made up, though. There are records of an Incan tribe near Lake Guatavita who had a ceremony where leaders would drop gold and jewels into the water as an offering. It's possible that the original legend about El Dorado was based on this ritual, and over time, it just got wildly exaggerated into the search for a city full of riches. Sadly, the Spanish pursuit of El Dorado led to the destruction of many indigenous tribes too, as they searched for a place that might never have existed in the first place. Gobekli Tepe is one of the most mind-blowing ancient sites in the world. Found in Turkey, it's a massive archaeological complex that's over 12,000 years old, making it older than Stonehenge or the Great Pyramid. It's a giant ceremonial site with massive pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, and detailed carvings of animals like snakes, boars, and foxes. This wasn't just a place for regular people to live, it was more of a religious or spiritual center. Scientists believed it was built by hunter-gatherers, not advanced civilizations. The fact that people without farming or settled communities could create something this sophisticated does change what we thought we knew about early human history. What makes it even more mysterious is that after it was built, it was intentionally buried around 8,000 years ago. No one really knows why it was buried or who did it, but it's kept the site hidden and preserved for thousands of years. The site's original excavator, Klaus Schmidt, believed it was ritualistically refilled, but it turns out that's probably not the case. More recent studies have shown that it was most likely the result of landslides. Puma Punku in the Andes Mountains of Bolivia is part of a larger temple complex linked to the Tiwanaku culture. It's thought to have been built between 536 and 600 CE, but some researchers think it could be even older than that. The site has these impressive stone blocks, with the largest weighing around 131 tons, way heavier than most modern construction equipment, and they were sourced about 50 miles away. Moving these enormous stones to such a high altitude site would have been no small feat. The area is above the tree line, which means they couldn't use wooden rollers. So how did the builders actually manage to transport these massive blocks? And it's not just how heavy they are, it's the intricate carvings on them. There are these precise etchings cut into the stone, perfectly straight lines. Did they have some kind of advanced tools we just don't know about? Without knowing it, I'd think these were carved with modern day electric tools, but of course that wouldn't have been the case in the year 600. In Saqqara, near the pyramid of Djoser in Egypt, archaeologists discovered 24 coffin-shaped black boxes. These boxes are made of solid Aswan granite, a material so tough that it's hard to scratch even with modern tools. Each box is massive, weighing over 100 tons, and they're designed to be airtight. The lids of these boxes are also made from granite and weigh about 30 tons each. The precision with which these boxes were cut and assembled is just astonishing. Some think that the sheer level of skill shown in these boxes is just so high that it seems almost impossible for ancient people to have achieved it. Of course they did though, which just goes to show how truly impressive the ancient Egyptians were, unless of course you're in the alien camp and think that aliens just helped them out or that the Egyptians copied some advanced design of theirs. As for now though, nobody knows exactly why there are 24 boxes or what their original purpose was. Nan Madol is an incredible ancient city located on the coast of Phnom Penh in Micronesia. The site has about 100 artificial islets spread over 150 acres of lagoon. It's estimated that it could have housed more than 1,000 people. Built between 1100 and 1628 CE, Nan Madol was likely a ceremonial and political center. What makes Nan Madol fascinating is how it was built. The structures are made from massive basalt columns, and there was no mortar. The builders just constructed and placed the stones perfectly. It's incredibly impressive, but how did they do it? Well, legend has it that giant birds lifted and placed these heavy stones. The layout of Nan Madol is complex as well, with interconnected islets and waterways. This was a highly organized society. The people who lived here had very advanced skills. Asuka is a village in Japan that dates back to the Kofun period, around 250 to 552 CE. The area is rich in history, and the massive stone structures definitely add to the allure. There are about 20 famous stone monuments here, and to this day, some of them are still super mysterious. No one knows exactly who built them or why. This is definitely the case with Masuda no Anofune, or the rock ship of Masuda. This massive stone structure measures 36 feet long, about 26 feet wide, and is about 16.5 feet tall, weighing around 800 tons. It sits at the top of a hill, and looking at it, it doesn't resemble anything else in the area. A lot of the other monuments look more like Buddhist pieces, but this does not look like your typical Buddhist architecture at all. In fact, I don't really know what style of architecture it resembles. It looks almost alien. At the very least, it looks like something you'd see in a modern art museum. There are some theories about its purpose, but none have been proven. Some think it could have been a ceremonial site, others think it might have had some astronomical significance, which seems to be the go-to explanation when experts just have no idea what the hell something is. It's something to do with the stars. The Longyu Caves are a group of 24 man-made caves in China. The caves were carved out of sandstone, and as for who built them and why, no one knows. They were mentioned in a 17th century poem, but no one really knows exactly when they were created. Some clay pots found in the silt inside the caves have been dated back between 206 BCE and 23 CE though. Another cool thing about these caves is that they were found by accident. In June of 1992, 4 farmers drained some ponds in their village, and there they were. What they thought were just ponds turned out to be huge man-made caverns. After doing some digging, they discovered 19 more caverns nearby too. The caves could be over 2,000 years old, but there are no historical records detailing how or why they were built. But how would they have been constructed though? Well, with the types of tools available at the time, it would have required around 1,000 skilled workers digging 24 hours a day for many years to complete a project like this. Another odd part, there's no evidence of where all the rubble went. It's estimated that over 1 million cubic meters of stone were removed, but not a single trace of it has ever been found. The walls of Sacsayhuaman. I was saying that, Sacsayhuaman. They're a very impressive feat of ancient engineering found just outside Cusco, Peru, built by the Inca in the 15th century. It's a massive fortress famous for its enormous stone walls made from giant blocks, some weighing up to 200 tons. And aside from how heavy they are, the stones fit together so nicely and tightly that you can't even slide a toothpick between them. Sexy woman indeed. This site would have been used as a fortification and for ceremonial practices. The walls are arranged in a zigzag pattern, which makes the place effective for defense. But how did the Incas manage to transport and shape these massive stones without modern tools? Well, there are theories. They could have used wooden sledges or ramps, but no one really knows for sure. When the Spaniards arrived and took over Cusco, they were so amazed by the walls that they believed only demons could have built such an incredible structure. They even tried to tear down parts of it, but the boulders were just too heavy for them to move. The stone spheres of Costa Rica, also known as the Dique spheres. These perfectly round stone spheres range in size from just a few inches to over 8 feet in diameter, with some weighing as much as 16 tons. They're found mainly in the Dique Delta and the nearby Isla del Cano. Most of these spheres are made of a hard type of granite called granodiorite, and they're believed to have been created by the now extinct Dique culture between 500 CE and 1500 CE. How did they carve such perfectly round, smooth stones? We don't know for sure. Some researchers think they might have used tools made from harder materials or just had techniques that we can't fully understand today. There are also myths and legends that the Dique people had a potion that they used to soften the rocks and sculpt them. All we know for sure is that the precision and craftsmanship here is very impressive. What about what they were used for? The main theory is that they were used to mark the burial sites of important people. There's always the possibility though that they built them just because. I mean, why not? They look nice. Unfortunately, a lot of these spheres have been moved or destroyed over the years. Only about 30 are still in their original locations. The Plain of Jars is one of the most fascinating and mysterious archaeological sites in Laos. The site is full of large stone jars scattered all over the landscape. Some of the jars are massive, weighing up to several tons. Some are much smaller. There are over 2,000 of these jars across the region, with the largest concentration found in a site called Site 1. And you guessed it, no one really knows who made these jars or why they were created. But archaeologists think the jars date back around 500 BCE to 500 CE. The jars were often carved from sandstone or limestone and are mostly cylindrical. Some theories suggest they were used for burial practices, possibly to hold the remains of the dead, but legend has it they were created by giants. In Bada Valley, Indonesia, you'll find some incredible stone monuments. These statues look a bit like the moai from Easter Island. You'd think that with such striking designs, historians would easily know when and why these megaliths were created, but again, no one really knows how old they are or what they were built for. When locals are asked about the purpose of these statues, they often just say, well, they've always been there. Some believe the megaliths are linked to human sacrifice. Others think they were to ward off evil spirits. Some tales even say these stones are criminals turned to stone and that they can move on their own at night. Another cool thing, the megaliths weren't made from stone found in the local area. The Olmec colossal heads. These are some of the most beautiful artifacts from the ancient world and some of the most intriguing. They were crafted by the Olmec civilization, which lived on the Gulf of Mexico between 1200 BCE and 400 BCE. The heads seem to represent important Olmec rulers, given how difficult it would have been to construct them, and the fact that each and every one of them are unique. So far, 17 of these heads have been found, with 10 from San Lorenzo and 4 from La Venta, both major Olmec sites. Each head is carved from a single basalt boulder, and some of these massive stones were transported over 62 miles to where they stand today. They're actually older than the more famous moai of Rapa Nui. You can tell by looking at them that they're incredibly heavy, 6 tons at the smallest to over 50 tons for the largest, which was never completed. We still don't know exactly how the Olmec moved these gigantic boulders. In fact, we don't really know a whole lot about the Olmecs at all. These heads are some of the few clues we have about their civilization, which mysteriously vanished over 2,000 years ago. Deep in the jungles of northern Guatemala is El Mirador, an ancient city-state that was once home to over 1 million people. El Mirador is huge. It's one of the largest and oldest Maya cities. What's really cool about it, though, are the roads. There's a 150-mile network of ancient highways. They were rediscovered in 1967 by British explorers explorer Ian Graham, who published a map of the site. Then in 2006, researchers used lasers to scan the Mirador Basin from the sky, and they were able to create 3D images that showed this system of roads, pyramids, and canals. The highways themselves were massive, with raised causeways 20 feet high. What's wild is that these roads were built between 600 BCE and 100 CE. They would have helped move supplies and people across this vast city. These ancient roads are part of what make El Mirador one of the most sophisticated ancient civilizations in the Americas. What you're looking at here is the mysterious Monk's Mound in Illinois, part of the Cahokia Mounds. The mounds were part of an ancient city, home to the Mississippian people between 1050 and 1350 CE. Cahokia once had a population of 15,000 to 20,000 people, and it was a marvel of engineering and planning. The site now contains about 80 mounds, but the original city had around 120. The mounds were used for everything from ceremonial purposes to housing elite rulers. The most famous mound, Monk's Mound, is the largest in North America, standing 10 stories tall and covering 14 acres. Pretty bizarre, you have an ancient pyramid right in the middle of Illinois. Cahokia was the largest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico and one of the most complex archaeological sites in the US. The city's original name has unfortunately been lost to time, but the mounds were named after the Cahokia tribe, a group that lived nearby when French explorers arrived in the 17th century. Uxmal on the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico is one of the most important cities of the Maya civilization. It's a site full of massive structures, but one of the standouts here is the Pyramid of the Magician, also called the House of the Dwarf. Legend has it that a dwarf, who hatched from an egg, built the pyramid in a single night. In reality, the pyramid was built in the 6th century, but it's still an impressive feat, standing 115 feet tall. The pyramid is the largest building in Uxmal, with 5 levels and multiple temples inside. The Maya often built new structures on top of older ones, and Temple 4, one of the top temples in the pyramid, has 12 stone masks around its doorway, thought to represent Chak, the rain god. The governor's palace, another giant structure, covers over 12,000 square feet. You'll also find ancient roads that connect Uxmal to other Maya cities like Tikal and even Caracol in Belize. Today, Uxmal is an UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's easy to see why. Chichen Itza is one of the most famous and impressive ancient Maya cities, located in the heart of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula once again. At one time, it was a busy place full of religious ceremonies, politics, and trade. At its peak, it was home to around 35,000 people. It was built in a perfect spot near a bunch of natural sinkholes that provided plenty of water. In fact, the name Chichen Itza comes from the Mayan words chi, mouth, chen, wells, and Itza, which was the name of the Mayan tribe who settled there at the time. Chichen Itza was founded in the 6th century, but it really reached its height during the 10th century when it was influenced by the Toltec people from central Mexico. One of the most famous buildings here is El Castillo, the pyramid at the center of the site. At 79 feet tall, it has 365 steps, one for each day of the year, and during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the shadows create this illusion of a serpent slithering down the stairs. Machu Picchu is one of the most iconic ancient structures in the entire world, sitting high in the Peruvian Andes and nearly 8,000 feet above sea level. It's a 15th century Inca citadel, often called the Lost City of the Incas, and for good reason. It was mostly hidden from the outside world until 1911, when American historian Hiram Bingham rediscovered it. The site is mind-blowing to say the least. It was built in the classical Inca style with perfectly fitted dry stone walls, and its 3 main structures, the Temple of the Sun, the Temple of the 3 Windows, and the Intihuatana are still standing. The Inca never wrote anything down though, so no one really knows exactly what Machu Picchu was for. The leading theory is that it was a private retreat for the Inca emperor, but built around 1450. Some archaeologists think it was more of a royal estate, but we still don't really know. Machu Picchu was abandoned by the Inca around 100 years later, just before the Spanish conquest. Vilcabamba in Peru, often called the Lost City of the Incas as well, was the final stronghold of the Inca Empire. It was the capital of the Neo-Inca state from 1539 until its fall in 1572. It was the last base of Incan resistance against Spanish invaders. The city's remote jungle location made it nearly impossible for the Spanish to reach, allowing the Incas to hold out for decades here. Its ruins were hidden for centuries. In 1911, explorer Hiram Bingham mistakenly identified Machu Picchu as Vilcabamba, but years later explorers, including Jean Savoy in the 60s, found that the real site was actually this one here. For decades, the Spanish struggled to locate the city, with one chronicler writing, "Great resources are needed to undertake a penetration of that land." But the city was finally captured in 1572, leading to the execution of the last Inca monarch. Yaxchilan is an ancient Mayan city found deep in the jungles of southern Mexico, along the Usumacinta River. It was one of the most powerful cities in the Maya world between the 4th and 9th centuries. The city is probably most famous for its huge acropolis, a collection of buildings that includes temples, palaces, and ceremonial areas. The site is also packed with all these incredible reliefs that tell us quite a bit about the Maya life, their gods, and the rituals that they would have performed. Yaxchilan's remote location helped it stay hidden for centuries, and it wasn't until the 19th century that explorers started to rediscover it. One of the coolest things about this place is how the jungle has slowly started reclaiming the city, giving it this kind of lost feel to it. And next on the list we have geoglyphs. In the Amazon rainforest, large-scale geoglyphs, which are these ancient formations created by removing topsoil, have been discovered over the years. They're basically these colossal drawings carved into the earth, some stretching over 600 feet. They're in all kinds of shapes, circles, squares, some depict animals even. And researchers believe these geoglyphs were constructed between 2000 and 6500 years ago by indigenous tribes. As to their purpose though, that's still mostly a mystery. There are theories. Maybe they are used for ceremonial or religious practices, or maybe they had a more practical function like water management or defense, but the sheer scale of these things and the effort it would have required to create them definitely raises a lot of questions about what these tribes were capable of. Calakmul is an ancient Maya city deep in the jungles of southern Mexico, in the Yucatan Peninsula once again, and it was one of the largest and most powerful Maya cities, especially during the Classic period, around 600 to 700 CE. Found near the Guatemalan border, Calakmul was a major player in the Maya world, often locked in competition with other city-states like Tikal, which we covered in part 1, so check that out if you haven't already. The city is massive, covering more than 70 square kilometers, but it's most famous for its massive pyramids. The largest pyramid, known as Structure 1, stands over 145 feet tall and is one of the tallest Maya pyramids ever discovered. It's so big that it even dwarfs other pyramids in the region. Teotihuacan is one of the most impressive and mysterious ancient cities in Mesoamerica, sitting just 25 miles northeast of modern Mexico City. At its peak, it was the largest city in the Americas, with a population that could have reached up to 125,000 people, making it one of the world's biggest cities during its time. The city is famous for its massive pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. These monuments are massive, the Pyramid of the Sun standing at 200 feet high, making it one of the largest pyramids in the world. But Teotihuacan has more than just those giant stone structures. It also had a sophisticated layout with multi-family apartment complexes, wide avenues, and intricate murals that now give us a glimpse into the daily life of the people who once lived there. And the place had a lot of influence on places surrounding it too. The city's obsidian tools were highly prized across Mesoamerica, and evidence of its presence has been found as far away as the Maya region. Its cultural impact was huge. The later Aztecs even saw Teotihuacan as their spiritual ancestors and adopted some aspects of their culture into their own. Teotihuacan was established around 100 BCE, but mysteriously collapsed in the 6th century. This is super exciting because it's a very recent find. In southeastern Mexico, a team of archaeologists has uncovered a hidden ancient Mayan city, more than 6,000 structures, including pyramids, all buried under thick vegetation. The city has been dubbed Valeriana, and it was revealed thanks to LiDAR, which stands for Light Detection and Ranging. It's a laser-based mapping tool that uses airborne sensors to scan the landscape. The data, collected back in 2013 as part of a forest monitoring project, wasn't actually being used for archaeology, but when researchers took a closer look, they saw this sprawling Mayan city. And according to Luke Owl Thomas, the study studies lead author, our analysis revealed not only a picture of a densely settled region, but also a lot of variability. End quote. This wasn't just a small settlement, but a large city, potentially home to 30 to 50,000 people between 750 and 850 CE. The city was hidden in plain sight, with farmers unknowingly working among the ancient ruins. And it's amazing because 6,764 structures have been found, and as Old Thomas put it, there is much more to be discovered. When I first saw an image of this place, I thought that it may have been an AI-generated image, but it isn't. Despite how fantastical this place looks, it's actually real. This is the Sigiriya rock fortress in Sri Lanka. High in the jungles of Sri Lanka, there's a towering rock fortress that doesn't look like it should exist. Sigiriya, also known as Lion's Rock, was built in the 5th century CE by King Kashyapa, who constructed this place on top of a giant boulder that rises 200 meters or about 650 feet above the ground. To enter the place, visitors had to climb this massive staircase that passed through the mouth of this colossal lion sculpture. After Kashyapa completed the palace, his brother launched an attack. Kashyapa's army abandoned him, and the king's wives jumped to their deaths from the top of the rock, and the fortress eventually was captured and fell into ruin. For centuries it was forgotten, first as a royal palace, then as a Buddhist monastery. When European archaeologists rediscovered it though, they were stunned. The lion entrance, real. The palace's mirror wall, designed to reflect the king's own image as he walked through, real. Today, UNESCO calls Sigiriya the 8th wonder of the world. What you're looking at here is known simply as the Lost City of Colombia. In the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta Mountains is a city that was lost to time for centuries. About 1,300 years ago, the Tairona people built an incredible city on top of the hills. And the story goes that they'd been instructed by their god, who told them to live as close as they could to the stars. For 700 to 800 years, people lived here until the Spanish conquistadors arrived, and the Tairona never encountered the Europeans themselves, but the diseases that they brought spread rapidly and wiped out the entire civilization. With no one left to care for it, the city fell into ruin and was mostly forgotten. It wasn't until the 70s that a group of bandits passing through the jungle came across this hidden city, and they couldn't believe their eyes. An ancient overgrown city full of precious artifacts. Pretty amazing. The bandits pocketed what they could and sold their loot on the black market, and that's when archaeologists caught wind of this amazing discovery, and soon what was known only as the Lost City was uncovered after nearly 500 years. For centuries, there's been a legend of this hidden city deep in the jungles of Honduras. Hernan Cortez, the infamous Spanish conquistador, heard rumors of what was called the White City, or the City of the Monkey God, a place said to be full of unimaginable wealth. Cortez searched and searched, but he never found it, and neither did anyone else for hundreds of years. But the legend never went away. Even Charles Lindbergh, the famous American aviator, claimed to have seen this city while flying over the country. Others swore that they'd found it, but for one reason or another, they couldn't or wouldn't reveal its location. Then in the early 2000s, archaeologists came across something almost by accident. A team following the path described by one of the more eccentric individuals who claimed to have discovered it ended up finding this massive ancient city exactly where he said it would be. Deep in the rainforest, they uncovered a pyramid and a series of stone sculptures, remnants of some advanced civilization that had vanished more than 1,000 years before. Now, it's still not 100% certain if this truly is the city of the monkey god Cortez spoke of, but it is still proof of a lost civilization. The lost city, now known as La Ciudad Blanca, is just a reminder that legends are sometimes closer to reality than we may realize. What you're looking at here is the ancient city of Tikal, deep in the Guatemalan rainforest. This ancient Mayan city, thought to have been called Yaxmutal, was once the capital of a powerful Maya kingdom, occupied from around 200 to 900 CE. There were huge pyramids, royal palaces, massive stone monuments, some still standing today, as you can see. Like a lot of Mayan cities, it's not super clear why it was abandoned. Could have been a combination of things, lack of resources, environmental changes. It wasn't until 1848, though, that an organized expedition rediscovered the place, but it's still one of the largest and best preserved archaeological sites in the Americas. These are the rice terraces of the Philippines. They're a pretty breathtaking feat of ancient engineering. These terraces, carved into the steep slopes of the Cordillera Mountains over 2,000 years ago, are often called the eighth wonder of the world, and for good reason. The terraces were designed to grow rice, but the real magic is in how they were built, using the natural contours of the land and without modern technology. Generations of indigenous Ifugao people with basic tools created all of this. It's said the Ifugao people didn't just build the terraces, they became the land. They engineered intricate irrigation systems, creating channels and bamboo pipes that bring water from nearby rivers all the way up to the fields so that the crops are healthy even in the dry season. What's even crazier is that these terraces are still in use today. People are still farming rice on the very same terraces that were built over 2,000 years ago. San Agustin Archaeological Park in Colombia is home to the largest collection of megalithic sculptures in Latin America and is considered the world's largest necropolis. There are all kinds of statues here, which were likely carved between 5 and 400 CE. You'll find gigantic anthropomorphic figures of jaguars, crocodiles, and birds. Some statues stand as high as 23 feet, or about 7 meters. Others are smaller, but still very impressive. We still don't know exactly who created them or why. What is clear is that a lot of the statues appear to guard burial mounds, which means maybe the ancient culture believed in protecting the deceased in the afterlife. The site was first documented by a Spanish monk in the 18th century, but it wasn't until much later that serious excavations happened. And today, San Agustin is an UNESCO World Heritage Site with over 500 statues scattered across more than 50 square kilometers. Great Zimbabwe, found in modern-day Zimbabwe, is one of Africa's most incredible ancient sites and the largest collection of ruins south of the Sahara. Legend has it that this is where the biblical Queen of Sheba once ruled, but in reality the city existed between the 11th and 15th centuries. The exact identity of the people who built it was debated for years, with a lot of the colonial government in Rhodesia outright refusing to believe that the advanced city was built by native Africans, but today it's generally accepted that the Shona people built the city. At one point, Great Zimbabwe was home to around 18,000 people, and its massive stone walls, some reaching 5 meters or about 16.5 feet in height, were built without any mortar. Nan Madol in Micronesia is an ancient city built on over 100 tiny islets, earning its nickname Venice of the Pacific. There's a lot of mystery behind how it was built. Local legends say two wizard brothers, Olishipa and Oloshipa, arrived from across the sea in a giant canoe, and they wanted to create a place to honor the gods of the sea and harvest. After two failed attempts to move giant stones to the site, they used the magic of a dragon to levitate the blocks. Nan Madol's construction is still being studied today. The people who built it didn't have pulleys, cranes, no metal tools, so it's believed they moved nearly 2,000 tons of stone every year for over 400 years. How they managed this, especially in such a remote area, is still one of history's greatest mysteries. Angkor Wat in Cambodia is one of the most jaw-dropping ancient structures in the world. It's also the largest religious monument in the world. It was originally built in the early 12th century, designed as a Hindu temple dedicated to the god Vishnu. By the 14th century, it had become a Buddhist temple, which it remains to this day. The entire temple complex is surrounded by a massive moat. The main temple rises up with 5 towering spires representing the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the center of the Hindu universe. The walls are etched with incredible images of mythical creatures and battle scenes, and the craftsmanship is so intricate that it really feels like a completely different world. And that's just from images and video I've seen. I can only imagine what it'd be like actually stepping into this place. And Angkor Wat is just part of what was once a much larger city, Angkor, which once housed over 1 million people. And that's massive when you consider it was built in a time long before cranes and other modern tools. Over the centuries, the jungle slowly is creeping back in and it's overtaking a lot of the city, leaving behind this incredible hidden world that wasn't fully rediscovered until the 19th century. Definitely a place I gotta add to my list of places I want to go.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Kailasa Temple in India. This is one of the most jaw-dropping ancient wonders that seems almost impossible when you first hear about it. Carved directly into a massive rock face in the 8th century CE, this temple is part of the Ellora Caves complex, but stands out because it's entirely monolithic. It was crafted from a single piece of stone. What's even more astonishing is the method of its construction. Artisans started at the very top of the rock and excavated downward, a technique that required impeccable planning and precision since any mistake could ruin the entire structure. The temple is adorned with incredibly intricate carvings depicting deities, mythical creatures, and elaborate scenes that showcase the artistry of the time. Dedicated to Lord Shiva and designed to represent his Himalayan abode, Mount Kailash, the Kailasa Temple, isn't just a feat of engineering, it's a masterpiece that continues to baffle and inspire architects and historians. Can you imagine creating something so magnificent without the aid of modern technology? In our number 9 spot today, we have the Baalbek Trilithon in Lebanon. This is an ancient wonder that leaves even modern engineers scratching their heads. Located within the ruins of the Temple of Jupiter, these enormous stone blocks date back to the Roman Empire and are some of the largest ever used in construction. Each stone weighs around 800 tons. That's the equivalent to stacking about 130 African elephants. The question is, how did people over 2,000 years ago managed to move and precisely place such massive stones without the aid of modern machinery? While we don't have definitive answers yet, theories suggest that they might have used a combination of rollers, sledges, and sheer human effort, possibly involving thousands of workers. The precision and scale not only showcase the incredible engineering skills of the time, but also highlight how much we still have to learn about ancient construction techniques. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta. This is an underground marvel that seems almost too advanced for its time. Dating back to around 4000 BCE, this labyrinthine complex was carved entirely out of limestone using simple tools like antler picks and stones. It spans 3 levels filled with halls, chambers, and winding passages that could easily get you lost. What's truly mind-blowing is the builder's sophisticated understanding of engineering and acoustics. Some rooms are designed to produce unique sound effects. Imagine chanting in a chamber that naturally amplifies your voice in haunting ways. The precise workmanship and planning required for such a feat are astounding, especially considering the limited technology available over 6,000 years ago. The Hypogeum not only served as a necropolis, but also stands as a testament to the incredible ingenuity of ancient civilizations. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Banaway Rice Terraces in the Philippines. These are an astounding example of ancient creativity that defies what we might think possible without modern technology. Over 2,000 years ago, the indigenous Ifugao people carved these terraces into the steep mountainsides of Ifugao province, creating a vast network of rice paddies that seem to ascend endlessly into the sky. While these terraces themselves cover a significant area, the entire system of rice terraces in the region extends over 10,000 square kilometers. What's truly mind-blowing is how they achieved this feat with just stone and mud walls, carefully crafted to adapt to the rugged terrain. They engineered an elaborate irrigation system that channels water from the rainforests above, allowing them to cultivate rice sustainably on steep slopes. Even more impressive is that these terraces have been meticulously maintained by countless generations, all without the aid of modern tools. number 6 spot today, we have the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela in Ethiopia. These are mind-blowing feats of ancient engineering that seem almost impossible even by today's standards. Carved directly into solid volcanic rock during the 12th and 13th centuries, these 11 monolithic churches weren't built in the traditional sense. They were sculpted from the top down out of a single massive rock. Each church sits below ground level, nestled within deep trenches, and they're all interconnected by a maze of tunnels and narrow passages. The workers had to plan everything with incredible precision because one mistake would ruin an entire structure. What's even more fascinating is the level of detail inside these churches. Ornate windows, intricate carvings, and perfectly shaped doors, all hewn from the surrounding rock. Commissioned by the king with the aim of creating a New Jerusalem in Ethiopia, these churches stand as a testament to human devotion and sheer determination. The fact that they accomplished this without modern tools or machinery is nothing short of astonishing. It's one of those historical marvels that makes you rethink what ancient civilizations were truly capable of achieving. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Great Zimbabwe Ruins, which of course are in Zimbabwe. These are an astonishing glimpse into a medieval African civilization that flourished between the 11th and 15th centuries. Serving as a royal palace for the Zimbabwean monarch, this ancient city is renowned for its massive stone walls built entirely without mortar, a construction technique that's pretty mind-blowing even by today's standards. The most iconic of these is the Great Enclosure, featuring walls that soar over 11 meters or 36 feet high and stretch approximately 250 meters in length. Crafted from meticulously cut granite blocks that fit together so perfectly, these structures showcase advanced masonry skills that leave historians and architects scratching their heads. How did they achieve such precision without modern tools? The sheer scale and craftsmanship of the Great Zimbabwe Ruins not only highlight the ingenuity of its builders, but also challenge common misconceptions about the technological capabilities of ancient African societies. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Sacsayhuaman Fortress in Peru. This is an ancient wonder that continues to baffle historians. Perched on the outskirts of Cuzco and constructed by the Inca in the 15th century, this colossal citadel showcases some of the most impressive masonry ever achieved. This fortress is built from massive stone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, and here is the kicker. They're fitted together with such incredible precision that you can't even slip a knife blade between them. These precisely cut stones weren't just for aesthetics, their interlocking design was engineered to absorb seismic shocks from earthquakes, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of structural engineering that was way ahead of its time. The methods the Inca used to move and fit these gigantic stones remains a mystery, especially since they didn't have the wheel or iron tools. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Plain of Jars in Laos. This is an ancient mystery. Strewn across the Shangkwang Plateau are thousands of enormous stone jars, some standing over 3 meters tall and weighing up to 14 tons. Carved from solid rock using iron tools more than 2,000 years ago, these jars were somehow transported over considerable distances, a feat that seems nearly impossible without modern machinery. What's even more mysterious is their unknown purpose. Were they part of ancient burial practices, storage containers for food or water, or perhaps used in fermentation rituals for rice wine? The lack of historical records leaves us with only theories. The sheer scale and precision involved in creating and placing these massive jars challenge our understanding of what ancient civilizations were really capable of. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Ziggurat of Ur. This is an awe-inspiring relic from the ancient world that defies our expectation of early human achievement. Built around the 21st century BCE by the Sumerians, this massive step pyramid was dedicated to the moon god Nana and stands as one of the earliest examples of monumental architecture. What's truly remarkable is that it was constructed using mud bricks for the core structure and then covered with baked bricks bricks bonded with a natural tar, which was quite an advanced building technique for this time. Thousands of laborers would have been involved in this colossal project, meticulously stacking and aligning each brick to create a structure that could withstand the test of time. This wasn't just a religious center, it was a symbol of technological innovation and societal organization. Considering the limited tools and resources available over 4,000 years ago, the sophistication of this challenges our understanding of ancient capabilities. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Nabta Playa stone circle, which is in Egypt. An ancient marvel that flips the script on what we think nomadic people were capable of thousands of years ago. Dating back to 7000 BCE, this prehistoric site in the Nubian desert is home to one of the world's oldest known astronomical alignments, beating Stonehenge by several millennia. It's astonishing to consider that these early societies had such advanced knowledge of astronomy that they could align stones with celestial events like the summer solstice and the arrival of monsoon rains. The stones were carefully arranged to track the movement of stars and planets, indicating a deep understanding of the cosmos. What's even more incredible is that this was accomplished by nomadic herders, not settled agriculturalists, showcasing their sophisticated observational skills and organizational abilities. The construction involved strategically placing stones in specific patterns, reflecting both astronomical expertise and remarkable planning.